Hello, this is Local Edition. I'm Leslie Layton. Well, floods, fires, earthquakes, landslides, a natural disaster, a disaster of any kind can hit at any time, and it is always good to be ready. The city of Anaheim has a plan in place, and they're reviewing that plan, and some of it could involve you. You can help yourself in the event of a disaster. With us now is a city councilman from the city of Anaheim, James Vanderbilt. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So you have your hazard mitigation plan in the works. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, every 5 years, the federal government requires local agencies like Anaheim to prepare a plan. And so our hazard mitigation plan is now being reviewed first by the State Office of Emergency Services, and then it's been forwarded to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which will sign off on our proposed plan for the next 5 years. So this is a living document that spells out all the things that the city would do in the event of a number of disasters that can happen. And we've had a number over the years. You know, as I've been a resident here my whole life, and I can remember certainly some of the big fires that we had when I was in high school. There was one that took out a few apartment buildings in downtown after some Santa Ana winds, and then there was one in the Gypsum Canyon that came right up to my backyard. So, you know, if it wasn't for the city's fire station was out there, you know, my life would have been a lot different. So I'm certainly very interested in this plan and glad it's in place. And besides fires, Anaheim is in a floodplain, at least the flat portions of it. So even though it's been a dry year, we always are at risk of having floods. And then finally, earthquakes, of course, are common in California. There are two major faults that pass through the city, and people are telling us, the experts at least, that we're still waiting for the big one and we were a little behind schedule. So all of these hazards or potential disasters are risks to the city, and the city tries to be prepared by having plans, and they're very comprehensive and include a lot of the federal resources, state resources, but there's also some aspects that include citizen involvement.
So you're also in the city where you have large concentrations of people and attraction. You have Disneyland and the Angel Stadium, for instance, too, that a lot of cities don't have to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. Those particular venues present special challenges. While the city's blessed to have them in terms of economic resources, they also present situations where you could imagine if there were a large earthquake or some other incident, a lot of folks who are not near their home, stuck essentially, and the city would be called upon to help them. In the case of Disneyland, they have a plan themselves that they've offered and shown to the city, which the city is satisfied with, but we're also responsible to the stadium and the Honda Center in the event there are large events. So those plans really spell out ways to sort of move people out of those particular situations. We can, you know, encourage people when they come into the city that they have, you know, some resources available, maybe more than a half a tank of gas. Maybe they have some water in the car, you know, just things that all of us should be thinking about. But it would be especially helpful, you know, if you're going to be going to an event. It's kind of just being situational aware, I think, is the new term for this era that we live in.
We can talk about some of the things the city is doing to prepare and try to avoid some of these disasters, but let's talk about what we can do on a personal level so that we can be ready if there is a disaster that hits.
Yeah, absolutely. So if people are especially interested, there are a couple of programs that the city sponsors and trains individuals for. So we have a community emergency response team program, which the fire department offers training to individuals over the course of a number of weeks. And these folks actually become part of a team that would respond as an auxiliary to emergency services. So you may have seen some of the signs that are green in color, and these folks would be wearing green vests and hard helmets. And most of them in Anaheim would go to some of the local parks where we have staging areas, and actually the facilities, if anybody's really interested, the bathroom sites on each of these parks have some storage area where there is equipment for them, and those captains for those teams have the key. So they would be on site almost immediately if called upon, and those would be places properly where we would have, you know, evacuation sites, or some places where they would offer some immediate services in the event of a large-scale earthquake, for example, or some other need to evacuate people to sites outside of their home or neighborhood.
I remember hearing in the past that we should all expect to fend for ourselves for 3 days if there is a big disaster, because the resources get so thinly stretched. You've mentioned, joining together on those teams that can help others out, but what are some things we should think about doing to continually be prepared and ready?
Yeah, absolutely, because we've seen if the hurricane like Katrina is any example, we know that sometimes disasters are on such a large scale that it is really impossible for there to be a response immediately, and it would take several days. So given that, I think we all are aware, especially since this is earthquake country, that there might be a situation where water sources are cut, and so having some water available at the house is probably primary, most important. And then afterwards, some things like flashlights or some devices that are battery operated, we know now that with everybody's electronic devices that they only have a certain capacity, and so there are a number of companies that will provide these extra battery resources for them to last a few more hours longer or up to a couple more days longer. Generators are another possibility. And then, it's also important for the families and neighbors to talk to each other and just come up with somewhat of a game plan. For instance, with family members, if you think communication is cut, you should know where you would be expected to meet. And it could be a local school or someplace in the neighborhood, just as a rallying point so that you can kind of assess things and not have to be worried about loved ones.
These are all things we've heard over and over again, but they are really important to repeat. I think that we go off every day and we think, well, I'll just call someone. I'll just, have my cell phone, and it isn't that simple. And just the simple, the water suggestion that you're talking about in the meeting place are really important to repeat.
Right, and insofar as water, not just at home, but also in your car. And there are, might even be smart idea to have some walking shoes in case your car becomes disabled. There's just too much traffic. Southern California's got a lot of people, and if they all need to go someplace in a hurry, we know how crowded freeways can get. So it's good to have contingency plans in mind.
I think that by now we're used to fires, especially in this area, a landslide here or there, maybe even prepared for flooding, but there seem to be some other dangers, the threat of terrorism. Are these things that you prepare for as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The city has several secondary and tertiary communication plans, and there again is another opportunity for community members to be involved, because we have a ham radio operator group called RACES, and they come together once a month to prepare for disasters. So individuals who want to help correspond or relay messages in the event of an emergency or relay information back to the emergency center can do so. So again, we have to recognize that while the internet and mobile phones are very convenient, they may in some instances not be available, and you have to kind of come up again with plans both at the family level, and then the city, of course, has done this too.
Well, these disasters may differ. How are they the same? What is at the core of the city and all of us being prepared?
Well, again, I think the big thing is to just recognize that they are going to happen. Once, in one way, shape, or form, we are going to have circumstances that really stress existing systems, and you might expect that there would be delays, and therefore having some sort of personal plan is important.
And we'll be better prepared to just wait it out.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, James Vanderbilt, Anaheim City Council.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie.
For being here. Glad you could join us too. I'm Leslie Layton.